Hey there, everyone. It's Clark Brown with Disaster Podcaster. Welcome to episode 2 of our 3rd season. If you did not catch our first episode, we had Mike McAllowitz, the incredible author of 8 to 9 incredibly strong, powerful, entrepreneur, business-minded books. Real easy to read. He was a great interview. He completely gets it. He has a great way of talking people through entrepreneurship is a shit show and it's tough, and you just got to stick with it because the benefits can be great. So just wanted to kind of make sure if you didn't listen to episode 1, this is the first one you're coming across, just like all of them. Go back and check them all out. We got some real good ones, some nuggets. Some of them cause quite a wave and stink because we kind of don't hold back on these. But just really have a good time. So if you're watching this for the first time, welcome. And if it's multiple times, welcome back. And I hope your 2023 is going well. Today, this is going to be part of a series of interviews that I'm performing and having with some of my friends this year. Lots of time podcasts are always going to try to get the big, huge, mega industry gurus that are always teaching on stage in front of 1,000 people. And those are great. We learn a lot from those. But to me, I think you learn a lot when you get down into my level and other levels with folks that just do it every day and have been through the battles and scars. And I've got a bunch of friends that fit inside that, as well as a bunch of the friends that I'm talking to in the first half of this season are going to be kind of some OG rebels. They were very involved in the very first couple of years when we were forming the Rebels, and what it stood for really meant a whole lot to a lot of people. So you're going to see a bunch of familiar names if you're from that group of the Rebels. And our first person today that we want to talk to is my friend, Mr. Danny Strong. Hey, Danny.
How we doing?
Good, man. How are you?
Living the dream.
Living the dream. It looks like you're in the great nation of Texas over your shoulder.
That I am. I am happy to say I'm now a full-time resident of Texas.
I can't wait to get into that story because that's my home turf, and it just gets in your DNA. So, hey, thanks for chiseling out some time of your schedule. I do know that you're running businesses in a couple of states right now, and if for those of you watching, we just are probably still coming off the tail end of a really major vortex freeze event across this country, much of this country. And most restorers gave up their Christmas and their New Year's breaks to serve customers. And I'm sure Danny was right in the thick of it. So thank you for chiseling out some time today.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about Danny. Where is home for you? Obviously Texas, but when did you get in this industry? Tell us that quick little elevator pitch of Danny Strong.
So this is my 20th year. I never thought I'd say that because I'm quite transient and hop from thing to thing. But from what I heard, those who make it in this industry stick and stay, and that's where I'm at. So yeah, I started carpet cleaning and then picked up psychrometry and then started growing a passion for drawing and classes and learning more. Then went to a construction company and bought a house and learned the estimating aspect of things. And that business was trying to go to government contracts with no contracts. So me and 8 other guys decided to leave. And I literally went into business the next day. So
wow. And
that was 14 years ago. DRS has been in business.
Okay. That's what I was going to ask you. When was that transition from carpet to restorative services and whatnot? And DRS is pretty much outside of Hartford or in Connecticut, right?
Yeah, so we operate, our main entity is in Portland, Connecticut, Central Connecticut. We actually service like 7 states up in New England. Okay. Day to day, pretty much day to day. We're in Connecticut, Mass, and Rhode Island day to day, and then we'll do Vermont, New Hampshire, New York, sometimes over to Jersey, depending on what our clientele has going on.
Yeah. Cool. So more recently, in the last few years, you've also opened up some equipment rental division of your company. And I think you do a little bit of consulting if a client needs it, right?
Yeah. Yep. So 2018, I kind of decided to branch out a little bit and because my company did one thing and it was too hard to ship the whole train track. So I decided to diversify and go into equipment rental, and then I did consulting as well. So the equipment rental has been going well. It's been constantly growing year over year. And I mean, we pretty much, I call it the golden triangle from Connecticut to Texas to Florida is kind of the area in which we primarily service day to day. So And then as far as the consulting goes, that's kind of all freelance project management, a little bit of business coaching, and pretty much project design type stuff. Getting a job set up or getting the what I call the triage phase of the job identified for other contractors that guys that aren't so confident in that.
Yeah. No, I think you said the triangle. That's a real weird shaped triangle, and some parts of that are more golden than others. I think the Florida part is just more like slimy and moldy, but no, I get you. Yeah. So, well, cool. Well, just for those of you watching, Danny and I, again, we are very good friends. We probably find ourselves texting each other twice a week. Sometimes it's off the wall crazy stuff. Sometimes it's really just, it might actually be industry things, and we have a whole lot in common. Danny, tell us about your family. You've got a real nice size family.
Yeah, so I have 6 kids, quite entertaining. Yeah. My oldest is 23. He's down in Austin, while the wife and littles from 9 to 2 are up in Connecticut. And yeah, so lots of traveling.
And your sister's in the industry too, Tammy.
Yeah, she was with me for probably 10 years. She's now a property manager for a condo association or something like that over in Florida. Yeah. And actually that's where I stayed during Ian. I stayed at her place and did many jobs in her community.
Yep. Yeah. I know she was in the business. It's a family affair. And another thing that Danny and I have in common is you are a practitioner and your business operates under the EOS model, the Entrepreneur Operating System, made famous by the book Traction by Gino Wickman. Danny actually has that in his business, and we coach that model here at Restoration Advisors. And tell us, when did you pick up Traction, and what has that done for your business?
I would say that was probably right around 2019, and it took we hired an integrator because I didn't want to play the integrator at the same time that I was trying to work through it and learn it. So I think it was good for us as a company to hire the outsource integrator. And honestly, I one of the reasons why I did it, I was just at a point where I hated meetings. I hated dealing with my staff. And because it was such trivial matters that came to me. So I had to set up structure into where people had specific roles and accountability. And we had scorecards and metrics tied to it. So it's easier to hold them accountable. It's easier for them to grade themselves before it gets to me. And allows me to focus on the, hour and a half a week that we had team meetings or to discuss the scorecard and what's going on.
Yeah, I want to clarify here. I don't think Danny hated his team and meeting with his team. Danny is like most of us, that he values time, and time is extremely valuable. So it's the amount of time that we have meetings in our general businesses that don't get us anywhere. So those meetings could have been an email. They shouldn't even include the highest level of people. He said, that's your department, take care of it. So that's what EOS does for me, is it makes most of the meaningful time, and it empowers everybody to be accountable for their own departments or their own things that they're supposed to be taken care of. And everything doesn't have to come back to the top just to go back to the bottom or to the middle.
So before EOS, I still have the cup today. It says, I survived another meeting. That should have been an email.
I love it. Well, I'm also doing another podcast with another good friend of, I know, yours and ours. And I will say, listen, a lot of people say, God, Clark, you know a lot of people in this industry. And I do. And I put myself out there to meet everyone. Danny Strong knows a lot of people. I will cruise around the internet, whether it be LinkedIn or Facebook, and he's saying happy birthday to people that I didn't know he knew, that we know a lot of the same people. So, but in a few weeks, we're going to have a podcast with Mr. Parker Olson, who is also a mutual friend of ours. And one story I'm going to tell is, I think it was 2018, the RIA was having their expo right there in Austin, Texas. And Parker said, hey, you have a place to stay yet? And I said, I'm probably going to stay at the hotel. He said, hey, I got Airbnb, but I've got 2 other brothers of mine that are going to be staying here with me. And I said, and I'm kind of an introvert, Danny. I'm like stranger danger. If I don't know you, I'm going to be like, And I said, well, who are these guys? He said, oh, they're just great restorers. And this, again, didn't know you yet. And he's like, one's Danny Strong and the other is Chris Wisnowski within Circle. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know them. But I said, if you say they're cool. So no, we kind of to break the ice. But since then, I mean, I can't imagine a month that we haven't talked a few times. So that was a really nice house overlooking the hills, and had a couple people come over and hang out. So it was a really cool way to do it. So I appreciate your friendship. So you said
it's funny that's where I landed my house in Texas now,
Yep.
Kind of ironic.
So tell me about that transition for you to move down there.
I started working down here in Harvey and really appreciated it and liked it. And I knew I had a love for Texas, so wanted to start working on it. And my son kind of got into the business. He's 23 now. He got into the business when he was like 18 and started traveling with me. And he liked Texas, and we ended up having an opportunity to work down here through a fellow restorer that invited us down to help run some volume claims. And we just decided to set up down here.
Cool.
Pretty sure 2019 maybe.
Yep. I like Austin. I mean, Austin is, it's one of those cities in this country that has really gone through a big metamorphosis in like pockets of the town, and they're kind of getting a bad rap, but Austin is a very good indicator of Texas. Obviously the music scene and the people. It's a pretty smart town. There's a lot of educated people there. Even though they go to UT, they're still kind of smart. I mean, I'm an Aggie, so I can say that, but you're living north of town, so you're out of the scary bubble. But I mean, there's some parts of town that are a little disappointing right now, but I think our nation's just going through a real trying to figure out how to handle some of this cultural shift that we've got. But the homelessness is pretty heavy there and things like that. But I figure they'll get work. Texas usually self-heals itself, being from there. But tell me about, you were working at Ian. We didn't get to, no, you did. We actually had a party at the house, didn't we? We had a little cookout one day. So you had a pretty good run down there helping some other guys out. And are you finished down there? Or are you still kind of trailing on a few jobs?
Nope, we got everything. I actually just got my last trailer over to Texas. Came in, I think Monday. So
nice.
Finally getting everything staged and wrapped up over there.
Cool. Well, Danny, let's shift over to, you were part of the rebel movement. Now, by no means need vindication for what it stood for, but we kind of are aligned and we believe in a business's independence. But tell me what the rebel years, what attracted you to that movement, and then what was your part of it and stuff? What's your viewpoint on this industry as it relates to the rebel group?
So I came across it probably at YouTube. Actually, honestly, it was probably maybe even meeting Parker at the CR class and heard a little bit about it. I might have joined it slightly before that, but didn't really know much about it. And I've always kind of been a rebel in life in general, kind of cut my own cloth, cut my own path, if you will, and had a tendency to lead the way and have people follow me. So it kind of spurred my interest, and honestly, just the transparency and the constant conversation in the round tables is what drew me to continue to follow up on it. Learning what other restorers were doing throughout the country to navigate situations was very helpful. Honestly, I learned a lot, and I did change my entire business. I came into the trade, like I said, 20 years ago, learning Xactimate. Everything I knew was Xactimate. I was probably one of the best in the state as far as I'm aware. At least what my ego tells me in Connecticut. And so I turned my business on its head and pretty much got off Xactimate and stopped using it because adjusters were so pigeonholed and fixed on what they would and wouldn't pay, and I just got tired of it. I grew up a very adversarial life, and got to a point in life where I don't want to be that way. So I try to figure out ways to remove myself from that.
Yeah. You do. Going back to what you said, it's funny that our mutual friend Parker keep coming up here. I made mention that, he calls himself, he's part of the Xactimate Ninjas group, and he's a ginger ninja. And I said, so you're probably one of the top functioning operators Xactimate. He goes, not one of, he goes, I'm the. So he said his the same thing. He said he was the best user. And I don't know if you were in Salt Lake City with us, but they had a kind of a competition between Parker and Ben and a few other people, kind of like a speed versus accuracy thing.
I was at Elevate at Jeremy Reed's. Parker and Ben were in kind of a contest there.
Yeah, you got a contest based on, because I don't know that fastest is best. I think accurate is better, but time is money. On
who did it the quickest and who's the most accurate. So
that would have been fun. But yeah, so Parker said he was the best. I don't know if he really wears that crown, but I don't think he's asking permission. But yeah, what you said about the Rebels was, I think, a common theme for all of us is for us to have conversations that weren't really having anywhere else, to talk about the elephant in the room, and have, a lot of us saw what was starting to transpire, and that's between the programs, the process delay to not offend, the TPAs, of course, and that's starting to happen more and more, but they were happening separately without everyone in one place talking about it. And then everyone thought they were the only ones going through it, and therefore told themselves they must be doing something wrong. They can't solve anything with that. But bringing that all into one kind of ecosystem community, people start saying, oh, this is kind of a bigger systemic thing, where this is not me. It's basically a template. that the insurance companies are using. And I think that was the hot moment. And then I will tell you that just the community itself, hanging around other people and seeing how they do things. And like you said, just the different way that they looked at stuff was like, wow, just, really, really taught me a whole lot, and I'd already sold my company by then when we started that group. But I was like, man, I thought about reopening my company sometimes from listening to a better way to do it. So, but just like anything, and the Rebels are still a group, I guess. Yes, they're still a group, but they kind of just shifted. I think some of the original members left. And then I think a lot of the conversations ended up not being about the true original meaning for it. And then there was just some power struggles. And like you said, I'm with you. If I see drama, I'm going to walk the other way and try not to be part of it because it's just a drag. So now you have some equipment rental companies. Did you do well during the freeze, the vortex? Did you have a lot of equipment out?
I did. So it was a kind of a paradigm shift. A lot of my clients had sold out to larger companies. I wasn't exactly sure what the play was. So I kind of had gear all over, prepared to see what came in, but I wasn't really sure if anything was going to come in. So I got some decent amount of sales, not as well as I would have liked, but due to some of my relationships, I had tied up some gear in expectation for it to go to a former client, which is now a bigger conglomerate, and didn't end up taking it. I had me hold it, and so I ended up biting my cheek on that one and learning a lesson that you need to follow the contracts and walk where the contract is, and not go by verbal handshakes anymore, especially when somebody's sold out to a bigger entity because they don't really have the control they used to have. So,
wow. So that's two topics there that I just would say I was interested to see, and I didn't know if we were going to see much of it from Hurricane Ian, but last year was a big merger acquisition phase for our industry. There was a lot of that going on. It seemed like almost every single week, Michelle or was promoting some new, acquisition in CNR magazine. And I thought that maybe the hurricane season was going to be too early for a lot of those cult relationships to really have blossomed enough to make a big impact. So then I was wondering how that was. But I think everyone has more equipment. Everybody, if you bought this company, you now exceeded your capacity, just a matter of logistics getting it around. And so then the other thing is contracts. So Danny, I just recorded a new YouTube video. It's, they're lessons. So I just recorded. It's going to go out and it's going to get edited. Our industry, and if no one takes anything from this podcast today besides this and how awesome Danny is, I want people to stop thinking that work authorizations are going to hold up. Work authorization as a standalone contract with your customers, your residential or it's not. And Danny, I don't know, I'm going to ask you in a minute where you stand with that, but I had people argue with me and say, oh, we've used that nonstop forever. But have you tested it in court? Because a contract is a legal binding thing. A work authorization is a component underneath a pre-existing contract or an MSA. You now have a work authorization to do work on a previously contracted set of agreements and terms and conditions. And I've had 4 clients this week, Danny, that did freeze work off of verbals or work authorizations, and it just obviously the speed of the chaotic nature, the speed of things, it didn't quite go well. And now here they are. One of them, the customer actually said, I didn't sign a contract with you. You gave me a piece of paper that has no agreement to a dollar amount, and you can just sue me because I don't think it's, so that's what you're going to be faced with. And I know that goes against what the industry has done forever. Now, not in the commercial world. In the commercial world, we did a T&M, put a value on a job, maybe it's a not to exceed or a ROM, put that number into the contract. So at least they've agreed to that amount, that waive that in front of a judge. What's your stance on that argument, that whole scenario right there? Because you just mentioned contracts.
So because I operate in so many different states, I'm very well versed in what state requirements are in the states that I operate in. I don't know what they are in other states really, but I try to follow the law. And not only that, but even when it's not law, I stopped using work authorizations probably year 2, so 12 years ago. Ever since then, we've been putting dollar values on jobs and providing price lists for signature and operating in that manner because it's so much more legal and binding. And unfortunately, my experience in this industry, I end up in court all the time. People don't want to pay their bill and I have to pursue it. So luckily, with all the paperwork and documentation that we collect, I've been successful, I'd say 100% of the time because I've never had a judgment against me. And we've had to, come off the bill because somebody was indigent or whatever the case may be.
But you chose to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So and that's the thing is, I genuinely understand why It kind of goes back to a bigger topic of our industry is very reluctant to hold the client accountable for their own disaster. There's somehow this misplaced belief that because the insurance is paying for them, the insurance is responsible. The insurance is just their reimburser for their, I mean, it's really off. But I think, and just from conversations with hundreds of restorers, they're like, they're overwhelming empathy for the customer, but they just went through a traumatic experience. I don't want to wave an invoice in their face. And I said, I get it. I think you're a little wrong, but waving in the insurance's face who has no contract with you is literally a dull point. That's why they delay. The insurance company owes you nothing at all. Insurance doesn't owe a restorer a dime. They own the homeowner. And if the homeowner is not challenging them to get paid, handing them a paid invoice, the whole triggering of the mechanism is not in place for the policy. So there's still people, even clients, that can't quite stomach it yet, Danny, but I have gotten a lot of people start doing the price up front, put a number on it. And what that does, if the customer says, I'm not going to pay you that, I'd rather know before I start than after I do the job and have the expense out. So, we've talked about that ad nauseum, but during this freeze, during this event where people had 30, 50 jobs and they were just doing handshakes and work authorizations, that is risky. I mean, super, super risky. And I think they could learn to listen to people like you that have been in this business for 20 years. The results of that could be catastrophic to your financials, at least, especially on the slow pay for the first quarter of the year.
Absolutely.
But contracts aren't evil. Contracts they're not evil. They're not, you're in business, and they're not going to make you a bad person. They're just going to make you a professional person.
Transparency is key when it comes to contracts.
That's it. The right kind of people you want to work with have no problem with contracts. The wrong kind of people, they like to do things a different way, and maybe we just need to let somebody else work with them, and we just need to continue to find our avatar of who we work with, and that's the big thing. But that's still a problem in this industry. And when I talk to my peers, Danny, and you and I have talked about it, these problems aren't going away, because every single time a new restorer opens up, whether they're independent or a franchise, there's a lot of voices telling them that that's the way you do it. So therefore, that's how we repeat the same things over and over and over, as opposed to creating a new narrative where we can snub this out and start to see some real transition. Do you agree with that?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I even see it in my own business when we're hiring a new manager and training a new manager. Like you said, the empathy plays a role in it, and they want to move fast because it's an urgent situation. What I find, my experience tells me, you actually lose control of it by moving fast. It's our job to come up with so in my business, in the restoration business anyway, we have what we call the 4 pillars. And number 1 is the project design. If you don't come up with that project design effectively and onboard that client with what's going to happen, how it's going to happen, and lay that out properly for them and get them to sign the proper documentation, you've lost that job before you even step foot on it.
I love that. And you and I both, I agree. Onboarding it's a that by itself, if a company can really grasp that will see it'd be transformational for most of them. I'm convinced that clients don't know what the plan is, and for our lack of telling them, they leave it up to their imagination, and then it's just ambiguous. But I love the language of telling a customer, we are professionals at this, and the more that we can stick within our process that was specifically designed to handle your type of loss, the more we deviate from that, the more unexpected hazards are going to happen, the more unexpected, possibly expensive and things. As long as we stay within the process and the communication circle, the outcome usually is incredible. You tell a customer that, and I think a customer would say, I hired the right people, because that's kind of like real professional language, as opposed to, Mrs. Jones, you won't have to pay a dime. Your insurance will pay the whole thing. There's no worry. I'm like, don't ever say that. I mean, your intentions are great, but you're giving them a free pass, and that's not it's not going to help. It's not going to help you. It's not going to help them or anything. So
I'll throw out the second nugget for the day.
Yeah.
This is a fact that we run in our process that is definitely a nugget in the takeaway. We call it the communication tree. We identify one point of contact for the project and one point of contact for our business. And nobody other than that has authoritative ability over the project other than those 2 people. And the reason being is, obviously, in the insurance industry, you have the homeowner, you have probably a property manager, and then you have an adjuster. So nobody knows who they're working for, and everybody's moving in different directions trying to please everybody. So by doing that, we've pulled ourselves back from that, and we've clearly identified who's the authoritative person that we're actually going after, and who is the one that's going to make the decision as to whether the scope's going to change other than us. And everything's going to go through that person. And that's one thing that really alleviates 80% of problems in proper onboarding and relaying that information to the customer.
That's huge. That's a huge nugget. I hope everybody rewinds that, listens to it, and tries to adapt something like that in their own business, because it is I mean, I can think of the nastiest jobs I ever had weren't our equipment. It was communications, and it just went south. So you're 100% right there. And I wish restorers would ask more questions and talk less. Stop selling and start asking the customer questions like outcome questions. What would a positive outcome of this experience look like for you? When we're finished, what would it take for you to say that was a 5-star service? Get their version of that, because what you might think it is for someone, it might be something totally different. And I don't think this is a time to assume. So ask the customer, saying, we're going to try everything we can to please you, but I don't want to do guesswork. What triggers you? What upsets you? What's going to be a black eye for us? And I think if you intentionally ask those things and even let them see you write it down, and the rest of your team has access to that, I think the customer will be like, that's someone to listen to me, because most people want to be listened to. So just an idea. I think those kind of tie in together, part of that communication tree. But I love that, Danny, is even if you're the owner of the company, you're going to go through the conduit and make sure you're talking through the person that was delegated so that you're not confusing things, right? And that's also not taking away their authority. You've delegated 100%. Something to someone. I think that's really powerful. So I hope everybody listening will adapt that. And if you want to reach out to Danny and ask you more about it, he's not hard to find. He's in Texas or Connecticut. What do you think the next 5 years of our business looks like, Danny? We talk about that in our circles a lot. What do you see some things happening in the future?
I mean, I definitely see the larger companies continuing to acquire more. I don't see that stopping anytime soon. So the 100% independents are going to have to be very nimble and move very quick and swift. And I myself am making significant changes over the last year. And honestly, if you would have, my mental health as it relates to this business is significantly better than it was last year, just because of all the changes we've been making. Because I realize I have to be able to shift this business on a dime in order to be able to keep up with the larger guys. And I'm hoping AI is going to pick up a little bit more. And like, for example, if you go do a 3D model with Matterport, I'm actually hoping you'll be able to get a Xactimate type rendering bill and say right then and there immediately whether I'm going to accept it or not. Let's take the problem out of the equation, you know?
Yeah. And I think there will be some shifts in the estimating world too. I don't know what they look like, but I think that's going to be a big place. But I like your idea of the, yes, the acquisitions are going to play a big part, but I think the smaller, I think everyone needs to become more strategic. The very first thing in your funnel is the attracting, is getting that first notice of loss. I see too many people, your biggest problem is not this or that. It's getting consistent leads. I mean, any business depends on sales. So as these big companies grow, as programs continue to grow stream, I actually think Amazon could eventually start bringing aboard contractors in Amazon, and they have the distribution and the user interface. They can tell customers, hey, if you have a flood in your house, go to your app. We'll dispatch a company that's vetted. And I just think that whole model is just like Home Depot or Lowe's or someone saying, we've got preferred vendors and warranty guys. I think the automation of that stuff is big, but I would tell small businesses right now, because I've got a lot of clients that tell this, get good at digital marketing. You have got to exist in that digital world because it's growing. And I'm not saying make TikTok videos, although I could tell you right now, Danny, I've seen some alarming results from some restoration companies that have adapted doing some TikTok and doing a lot of reels. And I'm 50 years old, Danny. I don't want to go there. I don't want that to be the new thing, but that's where your clients are. I think we still have homeowners who own businesses and structures. They're still Facebook. They're not really TikTok. They're not necessarily Instagram or something. So I think Facebook is still it. But if you don't have a strategy around that, I mean, you can have relationships and you can have referral partners, which are my favorite, but I think the big dog in the room is going to continue to, the society is going to merge. So I think those are some of the things, but I'm with you. I think just the strength to afford to withstand payment receivables on scale. The bigger companies are going to have the pockets to do that, and the smaller guys are not. So
I think we're going to see a lot more fragmentation in the industry as well.
yeah.
We're starting to see a little bit with, instead of everybody doing everything, you're starting to see a lot more specialized, like ductwork, for example. There's one person for ductwork, one person for artwork, one person for electronics.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, there might be a bigger company that owns every single franchisee of one of those, but at the same time, I think the segregation is going to continue to happen.
So one project might have 5 sub niches that are working on that job.
Yeah.
Is that what you're thinking? I've watched that over the years kind of evolve, or not evolve, but go back and forth. And my background was in dry cleaning and textile. I was doing textile cleaning 20 years ago, and I would watch the carriers go between tell the contractor, you just find someone to do the textiles and y'all handle it and put it in your bill, to no, we'll have people on our list. We'll call the textile people out ourselves. And then at the end of the day, the carrier's like, I don't want to assign contractors. That's not what we do. That's why the TPAs became so big, is that we'll let TPAs do that. But Allstate didn't necessarily want to call out dry cleaners because then they're responsible for the performance of those contractors. And that's just not what they do. So I think that shift continues to bounce around. But if we don't do something about these TPAs, they're going to create vendor lists for all these specialties, and they're going to absolutely control the project from the beginning to the end. And that's not always good for everybody else. So I got one more hot question, more hot button for you. Public adjusters, what is your stance on PAs in the industry and especially maybe in mitigation and things like that? Do you have a stance on that? Do you have experience?
So as it relates to my business personally, we've kind of peeled back the onion, if you will. I want to please the customer. We did everything from soup to nuts. And the older I get and the more experienced I get, the more I want to scale that back and peel the onion back. And I say that because we're primarily commercial and municipal. So I don't do a whole lot of residential where PAs are more suited. I'm not saying PAs aren't suited for commercial, but I see them a lot less in that arena. I mean, PAs have their time and place. I've worked with some in the past, either by proxy or whatever the case was, but never consistently dealt with a particular PA that, was better than the other. I mean, some have their little niches like anything else. Some are good at content, some are good at building. Some use the delay, deny, defend tactic in order to get the insurance company just to get ticked off and pay the bill. Some like to expedite the claim, get it over with.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of flavors. And the reason I bring it up, it's been a discussion in some other circles. And I know they're really, really big in the roofing world and the contracting side, but I think it's, exterior damages and stuff. But I just think that the speed at which mitigation goes, they're just people who have tried to convince me that an insurance claim should not exist with a insured without a PA being involved, because the insured is generally not equipped to deal with what's about to happen with the insurance claims process. There's a part of me that doesn't disagree with that, Danny. I believe that the cards are stacked against most people. You mentioned delay, deny, defend. I think there's an education level. I think that there's too much ambiguity in the language of things, and there's too much, you can read something and take infraction and perceive it for something else. And I think that's what some claims people do. I mean, adjusters aren't bad people. I just think they're doing their job and adjusting. I know 3 really good PAs, only 3, and I know hundreds, and I would work with them, but I don't think that it's just a default they should be on every single project. And for the reasons are, and I talked to a gentleman the other day, and it's like, well, number one, their contract is with the insured, and they're getting some states are limited to 10%, but most PAs want 10% of everybody's money. So we start getting into that mafia stuff like there, and then wanting to take a piece of the pie from everybody when I don't need the PA on my side. I know how to dry a house or clean from a fire. And then there's also the delay. They'll hold a job up trying to maximize coverage or a payout and freeze the whole job, and nobody gets paid for a while. And I think that happens a lot. But to me, I'm, again, back on the independent side. Just let me do my part. Let me get in and out, and you guys squabble with the insurance company. But I need to keep growing and get paid for what we did. And that's not always the case when a PA is involved. So I just wanted to see what your stance was. I know there's some areas where PAs are a bigger part of the landscape. There's actually a couple of states where they're not legal. I think Arkansas might be one of the states where PAs are not legal in Arkansas, which is interesting. But
I was not aware of that. Very interesting.
But I will say there's a part of me that says that the customers are outmatched by the powers of the insurance and what's about to happen, and the growing limitations on our ability, the contractor or the UPPA, the ability for us to even participate in any of that conversation is now isolating the customer where they have no one to lean on. And I don't have an answer for that, but I don't know that always that a PA is the person, because they're asking what's the cap, because that's the number they're going for, because they're they're incentivized at 10% of the whole claim. And a lot of times for restoring, they don't want to restore, they want to replace. And it kind of removes us from the equation. So I don't want to call it a big adversarial, because I do know some PAs that are good people, but I just think we have to have a transparent conversation about, just because we can doesn't mean we should.
On the other side of that, I personally, over the next 5 years, would like to see the APA grow significantly, because I feel like that's a independent bias thing that could eventually help. A lot of this, in my vision, is relating to residential, again, because like I said, I don't really see PAs too often on commercial stuff. But I mean, as it relates to residential, I mean, your homeowners typically, they're driven by fear. Every time they have a claim, they don't want to. What are their first thoughts? I don't want to get kicked off my insurance. I don't want to have my rates go up. So they're controlled by that.
And I don't want to pay out of pocket. I don't want to pay a penny out of pocket. Are you a member of the APA?
I am not a member of it. Unfortunately, yet. Probably will be in the future. I was actually contemplating bringing them in and calling them up and getting a membership based off a claim I got going on now. I just got to dig a little bit more into it right now. Before,
the consumer can be free. So the consumer is actually who needs to make the claim. They need to contact the APA, and they're free. Us as professional members are just supporting them from an industry, but we can't bring, they won't go to they have an SIU now, which is an incidents unit for, fraud, special investigation unit, SIU. And, but I'm a member, a professional member of those, and I'm watching a lot of people grumble about how slow it's growing. It takes a while to change something that's major. I mean, you're up against a behemoth of an industry that has had control of the narrative for a very, very long time, which is the insurance side. And people don't think that fraud exists as much as it does, but we've got proof. We've seen some arrests being made. We've got a lot going on right now. We have a new whistleblower initiative where we've got some whistleblowers that are coming forward with some real internal memorandums showing some appalling internal memorandums. And it's going to be ammunition for changing that narrative. These storms are big. This past year, I know that Doug and his team were in the storm and putting out a lot more signs. You always see the signs, beware of dirty contractors and beware of greedy scam artists. Well, we're the ones saying beware of fraud from carriers, beware from those dirty carriers. That narrative doesn't happen, but the insurance commission will tell you they have more complaints on behavior from insurance than they do on bad actions from consumers. So I'm also excited to see where it goes, but I think people just need to set expectations. They aren't there to solve your one, if Clark Brown has one claim when he's not getting paid, APA doesn't go sick them. They literally go after criminal fraud, not bad faith. And I think that's where some people need to really shift their paradigm it's got to be criminal, because just saying, hey, you're doing things wrong has no weight behind it. So, but I'm with you. And I urge you and everybody, as quick as you can, jump in, because they can't do what they needed to do from the sidelines. They're a nonprofit. So, but they're doing a big, they're doing a large benefit in, Fort Myers next week. And so hopefully they'll continue to do well. But like anything else, they're going to evolve. They're going to address what everybody's dealing with and stuff. But I'm glad you brought them up, because they mean a lot to me. I've enjoyed my time, and I'm not even a contractor. I have a lot of friends like you that I'm seeing reciprocal. It's really pushing down. So when are we not going to see you next? When are we getting together?
There's a whole lot of traveling this year. Already booked.
Are you? Oh, we forgot to talk about, I guess it's been 2 years ago. Tell me what was on your bucket list that those listening, what big milestone did you accomplish?
Man, I set so many goals nowadays and seem to accomplish them. I need a little bit of help. Which one would that be?
You climbed Kilimanjaro.
Oh yeah, that's actually 5 years ago now.
5.
Wow. Yep.
Wow, 5. I'm time. Goodness gracious. But yeah, so you and your mother, is that correct? You climbed together?
Absolutely. That was definitely a bucket list, amazing experience. And I'm grateful I had the opportunity. And honestly, restoration has provided me a life to be able to do such a thing.
Well, I want to close on that, because I want those watching to put nuggets and components of this call together. Go from Danny's been in this for 20 years. I've been in it for 20 years. We've had lots of setbacks. Danny, you agree with that? There's been lots and lots of, I've lost lots of money, and then I've made it back, and I've lost it again several times.
I've lost lost number one. Let's put it that way.
So the takeaway here is it's not going to happen in 2 or 3 years. If you're a restoration owner and you're thinking in 2 years you're going to have a juggernaut of a company, you're already failing because you're going to set yourself up for disappointment, and that's going to take your energy because your energy is what you have. It takes a while. And I always talk about our buddy Laney. He was on my podcast last year and said it wasn't until year 12 where he felt he could walk away for a period of time and go do something else. You know, he's teaching now at DeWalt, but it takes a while, and you've got to go through a lot of people. You've got to test out some processes. There's no magic bullets. You can't just go to RIA or Violand or Restoration Advisors and get the answer. You're just trying to put together the ingredients for the recipe that you're going to cook. So I want those listening that might get discouraged at the absolute uphill battle that this thing can deliver some days as a solo entrepreneur. Get involved with something, someone, all those competitors in your market. Look at them as collaborators and find the right people. Get to know Danny and I. Join AIR, join the RIA, join a Facebook group or whatever. But there's I see a lot of people taking this thing on themselves, just completely losing all their energy. And this takes a lot of energy. So listen to Danny. It's afforded us a lifetime of memories, good and bad. And I can't wait till the next 10 years, Danny. I'm gonna do some major shit in the next 10 years. I'm going to make this industry an actual recognized trade. I don't know about regulation. I'm not a big fan of regulation, but it cannot be easy to start a restoration company. There needs to be a barrier of entry to kind of clean this shit up. Do you agree with that?
I would agree with that, but through that, there needs to be accountability, because the problem with things right now is there's way more regulations than we would ever need, but there's no regulation. Nobody's enforcing it, which is the biggest problem in my eyes. If there was some sort of enforcement out there, for one, but then two is us as restorers, we have to respect each other, you know, and I hope that my legacy in restoration is that I'm looked at as a respectful person, because I think that's how I've had my success, is by not burning the bridge. And there's many other people that I came up working for that I still work with today because of the respecting them and not overstepping the boundaries. And I think that's important in restoration as we get so many people entering this arena.
I think in business, I think in all business, I think you need to be a person of value. And I think trust is the biggest currency. But I agree with I think that's a good place to close it out, is treat people with respect. Get answers before you judge or presume too much. But even where there is regulation, there is very little enforcement. I think Texas, the mold is a big one where you're at. There's a mold license required, but there's a lot that goes on wrong within the people that have the license and stuff. So, but I suppose that probably exists in a lot of trades, plumbing, HVAC, electrical. I'm sure it's the same conversations and they're having in their podcast, but I think that's not a reason not to try. So Danny, I think that was a really great way to end it. And then I think your legacy will be, I know people that have picked up the phone and called you, and you've always answered, and that's not nothing. So I appreciate you being alongside the ride with us here.
Thank you.
Everybody, check out Danny Strong online. He's a sir. Yes, sir.
Absolutely. You can count on that.
Count on that. Take care, everyone.